Find what you're looking for amongst the dead?
That is among the first lines spoken to you upon starting Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, and it immediately sets the stage for a game that is vastly different than its predecessor. That line alone, within moments of the game opening, portrays its mentor character of Kreia as someone a bit more stern and mysterious than your typical Jedi Master, and the game itself is already poking fun at the tried and true but kinda messed up RPG staple of looting random corpses. It's a shift in tone that can largely be attributed to a shift in developer. 2003's Knights of the Old Republic 1 was developed by the RPG behemoth BioWare, but its sequel in late 2004 was developed by the then-infant studio Obsidian Entertainment. KOTOR 2 being Obsidian's first game is a fitting maiden voyage, as it in many ways served as the template for the kind of stuff they'd be doing frequently in the years to come, making RPG games, often sequels in other companies' franchises, with high levels of reactivity, huge emphasis on writing, but extremely rushed and buggy production. Playing more than a decade after launch affords us the use of mods and hopefully mitigates a lot of those technical problems that original players experienced back at release, but you can still feel the remnant of this game's rough history. We'll get into all of that, but 2 quick disclaimers before we start the video proper. 1. I don't normally play games with mods for my reviews, but this time I did. KOTOR 2's The Sith Restored Content Modification mod is so ubiquitous and recommended within the fandom that it's hard to justify playing without it. It patches tons of major bugs and re-adds dialogue that was cut from the game last minute. It's a cleaned up version of the vanilla game. If you're playing on Steam, it's just a few clicks to add using Steam Workshop, so I highly recommend it. 2. In many ways, KOTOR 2 is its writing and story. I think in order to properly give my thoughts on this game, I need to delve into those aspects heavily, so heavily that spoilers will be regularly discussed. This entire video features spoilers both from this game and KOTOR 1. So with that, let's get started. How do you follow up on one of the biggest and most well-loved RPGs of all time? How do you follow it up with a smaller team, less time, and a lower budget? Those are the questions that KOTOR 2 was forced to answer, and it addressed them strategically. You can't just make a bigger and better KOTOR with less resources, so Obsidian didn't try to. KOTOR 2 makes a lateral movement with the franchise, instead of a forward one, making a game that's around the same size as its predecessor and the same engine, but with a darker tone and more character-focused story. KOTOR 2 is the Majora's Mask to KOTOR 1's Ocarina of Time. It reuses a lot of assets from Knights of the Old Republic 1, most prominently being that the core of its gameplay remains largely unchanged, and 2 whole planets are practically copy and pasted into this game. The last couple hours of its story are visibly rushed, and what isn't rushed still has bugs all over the place. Taking a look at the exact date of this game's release certainly answers the question of how did this happen. December 6th ensures that this game was out in time to meet Christmas demand. That's merely 14 months after KOTOR 1, and this really short development cycle shows itself in a few ways. 2 of the game's planets, Korriban and Malachor 5, feel especially rushed. The former being a return visit to a KOTOR 1 planet with half the content, and the latter expanding its hour count by planting dozens of characters inorganically in room after room without purpose other than sitting there to wait for the player character. The very first doorway I attempted to walk through exposed me to a recurring issue of characters clipping into the floor and needing to circle back to proceed. Individual play sessions taking too long can cause dialogue to randomly skip itself without any input from you, causing you to miss out on conversations. I ran into a game-stopping bug on Nar Shaddaa that caused the wrong cutscene to play and duplicated my party members. With the missed cutscene being critical to the game progressing, I was required to boot up an earlier save to keep playing. All of this with a mod install that makes the game more complete. It's unfathomable to me just how much worse the vanilla experience must be. KOTOR 2 is without a doubt rougher around the edges than KOTOR 1, and I can say this with extreme confidence having just finished both within this month on the exact same machine. Buggy and rushed are 2 words that never came up in my KOTOR 1 review, and the only technical problem I noted was the benign issue of character pathing being inconsistent. But I'm not making this video to poke fun or diminish the value of KOTOR 2. Quite the contrary. I give you the context of all the problems it has and all of the frustrations I experienced on my playthrough because I think it highlights just how meaningful this next sentence I'm about to say is. Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, is a better and more interesting game than its predecessor. For as plentiful and deep as its valleys are, the Sith Lord has just as many peaks worth celebrating, and the absolutely central pillar of its success is its writing. KOTOR 2's writing is on a different level than KOTOR 1, and I say this as someone who is a big fan of that game. This sequel's prose is more professional and its narrative more in-depth than what you're going to find elsewhere in the Star Wars brand. It's not content with just telling another story of good triumphing over evil, and it integrates more philosophical questions into its core narrative. Gone is the mustache-twirling villainry of KOTOR 1's Darth Malak, replaced with the titular Sith Lords. This triumvirate of antagonists have their own motives and reasons for pursuing the main character, with each being a manifestation of some sort of vice or agony inflicted upon the Star Wars fiction. Darth Nihilus is a hunger that can never be satiated, Darth Sion is a suffering that can never be relieved, and Darth Traya is betrayal itself. Darth Traya is the most important of the three, primarily because her reveal as a Sith Lord isn't made until the game's final hours. For a majority of the game, she is Kreia, a party member and mentor to the game's protagonist. You get glimpses into her motives as the story unfolds, and though her reveal as a member of the Sith is one that you may or may not have seen coming, it's clear that she's pulling strings and manipulating her allies to get her way from the start. What exactly that goal is ties into the protagonist and his actions prior to the game, and knowing this context is why you shouldn't play this without having beaten the first. Preceding the KOTOR franchise in the lore is an event known as the Mandalorian Wars. The warrior society of the Mandalorians started attacking Republic planets on the outskirts of the galaxy. The Republic responded and sent troops to war against the Mandalorians, but the Jedi didn't help. The Jedi Council cautioned against an immediate response and instead tried to wait out some of the fighting. Frustrated with the Council's inaction, protagonist of the first game, Revan, led an army of deserter Jedi to assist the Republic in the war against the wishes of the Council. Among these Jedi under Revan is the protagonist of KOTOR 2, known as the Exile, who was a prominent general in the campaign. Things came to a head on a planet known as Malachor 5, where the conflict ended with the Mandalorians being crushed with a decisive singular strike that nearly destroyed the entire planet. The destruction was so great that it caused a permanent change in the Exile, causing him not only to lose his attunement to the Force, but to become a Force vacuum, a black hole within the very fabric of the Force. The protagonist returned to the Council after the battle to face his judgment for having defected, and the Council sentenced him to exile. Years pass, and the events of this game see you playing as this exile in order to find the Jedi Masters who once exiled you and come to grips with their decision, while simultaneously warning them of the imminent Sith threat. The exile being a wound on the Force is instrumental to Kreia's plan, and why she chooses the exile as her new student. The events of the game are puppeteered by Kreia to allow for this wound on the exile to be expanded to the entire galaxy. The protagonist's forcelessness is not viewed as a weakness by her. It is a strength, a beautiful strength. And here is where the philosophy imposed upon this game comes to the forefront. Kreia is challenging the Star Wars universe's version of theological determinism, which is part of a greater conversation in our world concerning the nature of free will. Keep in mind that I'm no philosopher, but it goes something like this. If God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present, he must know what the future holds. If he knows what the future holds, how is it possible that we have free will? Free will dictates that we make our own choices, but the future being fixed runs contrary to this. This is the exact argument made by Kreia, just swap out the word God with the Force. It's a fitting substitute, too. The Force itself is described in a very similar way to God, with it being everywhere, and it's often personified in the fiction as having a sort of will of its own. Kreia herself is one of the most powerful Force users in the universe, despite her hatred of the Force. She sees it as a means to an end, but recognizes that even as she uses it uses her. Kreia loathes this idea of determinism and is driven by her ability to change it. Using the exile as a means to rid the entire galaxy of the Force would essentially liberate the universe from cosmic slavery. That's a level of nuance in character writing you're not going to find anywhere in KOTOR 1, and what makes Kreia easily one of the most interesting characters in the entire Star Wars expanded universe. Obsidian did a great job in fleshing out her motives, and ensured that its Philosophy 101 wasn't just slapped on top of the Star Wars IP, but instead delicately and beautifully woven into it.
Does it matter? Of course it does. Such titles allow you to break the galaxy into light and dark, categorize it. Perhaps I am neither, and I hold both as what they are, pieces of a whole. Know that I am your teacher, and that is enough.
Kreia and her motives alone wouldn't be enough to carry the game's writing on its own. They're elevated by a significantly stronger cast of party members than what's seen in the first game. This time, all of them. Everyone in the KOTOR 2 cast is just a little bit mysterious and a little bit broken. Most of them have something in their past that's gnawing at them that they're trying to make right, and traveling with the exile is their chance to do it. There's a few different things that I think make this writing work on a stronger level here. Firstly, it doesn't do the infamous KOTOR 1 thing where characters randomly seize control of the gameplay. No more walking around and then all of a sudden the camera pans to one of your party members and you get the notification that Karth seems upset and wants to talk. None of that happens here. Instead, dialogue is prompted more organically and by things actually happening in the world, like when Atton is recognized by someone on Nar Shaddaa. Secondly, each of the characters have some sort of intrinsic goal. KOTOR 1's cast can often feel like they were just sort of along for the ride, especially the non-Karth, non-Bastila characters. That's not the case here, and if you want an example, look no further than Canderous Ordo, a character who's a party member in both games. Canderous originally meets Revan in KOTOR 1, and they use each other to get off of Taris, a planet under lockdown. Why they stuck together after that is what I'm having a harder time piecing together. Did Canderous just respect Revan's strength? If there's a more concrete reason, I can't remember it, and I played that game like 3 weeks ago. Contrast this with his role in KOTOR 2, and the difference is immediately apparent. In KOTOR 2, Ordo is primarily driven with his goal to reunify the Mandalorians, who are currently fractured among the galaxy working as mercenaries. He believes in their culture and wants to bring them back to their greater purpose, and having him talk to Mandalorians you encounter along the way allows him to grow his forces. His secondary motivation is hinted at towards the end of the game, and it's his unresolved journey with Revan. After the events of the first game, Revan abruptly leaves his friends behind to deal with a presumably invading force on the edge of the galaxy. He doesn't provide details, and the friends he left behind can only wonder what his motives were and if he's still out there. It's not unrealistic to think that, at least in some small way, Canderous was hoping that his journey with the exile would answer some of these questions. These characters having their own motives outside of help the main character makes the motley crew feel way more grounded. Plus, when these motives are in some way conflicting, it causes tension among the cast. KOTOR 1 wasn't completely devoid of moments like this, but KOTOR 2's are both more frequent and compelling. Lastly, the characters themselves are just more complex. They don't really fall into the light side and dark side spectrum quite as easily this time around. Everyone has their baggage, like Atton's dark history acting as a soldier who got swept up in assassinating Jedi. Look at the exile himself and how prominent an aspect his history is to the game's core plot. Force sensitives in KOTOR 1 would remark about how unnaturally powerful Revan is, but Force sensitives here are more likely to comment on how broken you feel, like Choto, the Ithorian priest. This level of pathos among its characters does a lot to add to the game's macabre tone, and it's all the more incentive to talk to your party members regularly and unearth what past they left behind to come with you. You'd be forgiven for thinking that KOTOR 2 looked like a total conversion mod of KOTOR 1. If it weren't for the UI, screenshots of the game at any given time are functionally identical. The short development cycle demanded such. There wasn't any time to make changes to the fundamentals of the gameplay. What changes here are small and sprinkled on the surface. Character building has got a lot more interesting with the introduction of new Jedi class upgrades partway through the game, and the combat itself gets another layer with stances. You earn these stances as you play through the game and they can be swapped out on the fly. One is more efficient at deflecting blaster bolts, one is better in one-on-one scenarios, etc. If you've played The Witcher 1, it's not unlike the stance system that's found there. These are some pretty great additions. They aren't substantial enough to make you fall in love with the combat if you didn't like what 1 had to offer, but they're enough to say that the combat in KOTOR 2 is a decisive improvement. Other primary gameplay differences aside from the combat manifest themselves in what I will call events. KOTOR 1 rarely deviated from its alternation between D&D dungeon crawling and exploring towns, but 2 includes way more story sections where you're forced into specific characters and need to accomplish specific tasks. They don't hit the mark for me primarily because they rip the game away from its teamwork-oriented gameplay to focus on something else. These sections can be really hard, and sometimes for the wrong reasons. For example, if you've built a character in a more supportive fashion, all of a sudden the game will tell you need to 1v2 with them. These sequences can be really frustrating, especially because they often come out of nowhere and don't give you adequate time to prepare. KOTOR 1 never really did this. The only comparable scene where you need to fly solo as a party member is when Malak captures you aboard his ship and one of your crewmates needs to bust you out. But even then, KOTOR 1 has the decency to let you pick which member you think is going to be best for the job. KOTOR 2 also features some small changes to dialogue at a functional level with the introduction of influence. Your party members' likes and dislikes will inform how they react to things that you do, causing them to either gain or lose influence with you. Higher levels of influence can help unlock special combat perks, with most characters even being receptive to learning about the ways of the Jedi if you influence them far enough. And just as the exile influences his party members further toward the light or towards the darkness, I hope I can influence you to give this game another shot if you've written it off in the past. It's got its problems, far more than the first game has, and even though it's still not perfect today, the mod does a lot to help with that. For all of its technical problems and rushed planets, its story and characters are some of the most interesting and in-depth you can find within Star Wars. If the Star Wars series has shown us anything, it's that everyone deserves a second chance, and Knights of the Old Republic 2 has earned its redemption arc.